What's up guys, Hot Noob here. This is episode number 5 of Hot Noob's IT Programming Crash Course from Noob to Voob. In this video we're going to be doing an introduction to JavaScript, and we're going to be focusing on the output portion of JavaScript. Now before we get started, what does JavaScript do? It does everything in your web browser. It handles most of this logic and scripting or whatever. It's the programming portion of making websites. Alright, to get started, for this episode, I've gone ahead and created a javascript.html file with our basic HTML template in it, and this will be where we're doing the work. We're going to start off by creating a script tag within the body tag, and this script tag is where we're going to be putting our JavaScript. In the old days, it was more important to put in, I think, type equals text / JavaScript or whatever, but these days JavaScript is more or less the only option, so you can kind of just do script. Some people can argue, but whatever. Anywho, we're going to be focusing on outputting things with JavaScript and basically writing hello world. So I'm going to start off by saying alert, and we're going to say hello. Let's explain this. So this is alert. It's a function, and in that function, which is sort of identified by the brackets, we're calling this function with the brackets, and then we're sending it the parameters of the string hello. Everything in a string or within the double quotes is a string, and anything in single quotes is a string in JavaScript for the most part. And then there are some really weird things that JavaScript does, like regex is just some really weird thing that only JavaScript does, but we'll ignore that for now. And lastly, we're going to end our line with a semicolon. And before we get too far, JavaScript's pretty lenient these days. It won't really complain about missing semicolons that much in browsers. But when you get to other programming languages and you're missing that semicolon, it's not going to run. So don't develop a bad habit of not putting the semicolons just because you started learning on JavaScript or whatever. Always put the semicolon at the end of your line, with the exception of like if statements, and you get the idea. Just follow the C syntax and be a bit strict. Good habits will lead to less headache. So here's our javascript.html file, and I've just loaded it, and it says alert hello world. So it gives us this prompt, and we have to press the button to close it. We're not going to get into prompts today, or maybe we are. We can also do prompt hello. You know what, let's do it. I'm going to comment that out. We'll go into comments later. Hello. Oh, it asks for something. Okay. Just to give you an idea, you can do prompt or whatever, and we'll go into that later when we get into variables. Alright, let's do another way. We're going to say get the window. This is our top level variable for the most part, window. JavaScript is in a hierarchy for the most part. So you have window, and then within that window, we're selecting the document. And then finally, we're saying we're going to write to this document. And what are we going to write? Well, we're going to pass it a string. So we're going to say hello. And let's refresh. What? Our document says hello in it, and let's inspect this. And where did it put it? Within the body tag. And, well, basically right after the script tag. Just something to keep in mind. Let's put something here. And something below. Refresh. Something hello here. In the old days, they wouldn't really do this very well, but now it does. So, like I said, HTML is procedural, so is JavaScript. So it loads top to bottom. So it loads the HTML, the head, the title, then it comes to the body tag, and we have something, and then we have our script tag, and we're running, and in our script tag we're running document.write hello, write hello here, and then we have the word here, and then you get the drift. Top to bottom. Procedural. Alright, so we've outputted an annoying hello here. Okay, we can do this another way. By default, the default scope for JavaScript is actually the window. So you don't have to write down window, you can actually just write down document.write. And we're going to continue world. Continuing our sentence, something hello world here. Congrats. That's another way to output. Say you don't want something to be seen by someone, you want to do some debugging, or you don't want to go through all the hassle of outputting something, or you just want something for yourself. You can do console.log, and then within that function, hello, whatever, hello console. So let's refresh. And we're going to open up the debug tools here on the right. This is F12 in case you didn't get it from a previous video. Okay, well, my keyboard's not working so well. Anyways, it should open and close it with F12. There we go. And in this case, it opened it up right up to the console instead of, the element inspector. So what happened was when we refreshed the page, while it's running through, it said hello console and then JavaScript whatever. Let's see if we re-enable the prompt or alerts and refresh this. You'll see, well, you can't really see because it's in the way. Let's move this over here, refresh. So you see the console's empty, says hello, and then we get to it and hello console. And just to be even more like, okay, maybe it's some weird procedural thing, we're going to do here and hello console again and refresh. So we have hello, and we're at this line. None of this other stuff has run, and then we're at hello console and it says hello again, so we're at this line, and this hasn't run because it's procedural, and alert is like a blocking command. It does not continue until the alert has been closed. Something to keep in mind. And then hello again. Alright, well, that's all fine and dandy and annoying, and we've basically just created an annoying, overcomplicated page that does basically nothing. Well, let's take this to another step of doing more nothingness. We're going to create a divider tag here, and just like in CSS and style sheets, we're going to say ID equals test div. And just like in CSS, in JavaScript, we can select that test div and manipulate it, apply attributes or whatever to it, do stuff with it really. So we're going to say document.getElement by ID. And then we're calling this function, and we're sending to that function the string of test div. So we're telling this function, get the element ID, test div, and we're going to assume that it returns that it found it, and then we're going to say take that returned value and say inner text equals garbage. And we're going to save that, and when we refresh the page, we have garbage up top. And we go to our element inspector, and our div tag, which we set as being empty up here, actually has garbage in it. Alright. Page that still does kind of like nothing, eh? I'll go into variables later. Okay. Now, let's say we wanted to put HTML in there, and we put our HTML tags because we want to bold that garbage. It's extra bold garbage. It's just, oh, what happened? Well, we set the inner text property, And this is just one of those weird little things that's sort of legacy, but might come in handy every now and then if you don't want HTML, or if you're taking user input and you don't want any HTML to show, inner text. But let's say you want HTML to show. You do inner HTML. Voila. Now let's take this one step further, just like we did with style sheets. And we're going to say span inside of this test div, and we're going to say ID equals test, for example. And we're going to say hello. And I'm going to comment this line out. And we're going to take this one step further, and we're going to say document.getElementById.testDiv dot getElement by ID. I mean, this should work. I'm going to be honest here. I use jQuery a lot these days. I was against jQuery initially because I was a bit more obsessed with performance and whatever, but computers have since exploded with processing performance, and the bottleneck these days is programming speed and programmers. So micro optimization doesn't matter so much. So I don't really use JavaScript, the base of it, so much these days. This is just so you actually know it exists. We'll get into jQuery and whatnot in later episodes, but for now, this is the basics to JavaScript. And we're just going to say inner HTML equals world. I'm not even sure if this will work. No, it didn't work. It's not like jQuery. Anyways, we're going to select the div within here, and we get hello world. Now, remember, JavaScript is procedural, so I'm going to uncomment this line here, and we have document.getElementById test div. So we're getting this test div, and we're setting it so that the contents are garbage. What's going to happen? Garbage. And we get this nice little error here showing cannot set property of null because document.getElementById test here did not work. It returned null because this element was replaced with garbage. However, if we say b here equals id equals test, test. So because we're inputting everything in with double quotes, we now running into escaping problems. We can use single quotes here to set the ID, or we can just go double quotes and then put a backslash in front of it. That will escape it. Or we can just not use quotes altogether. I'm just going to keep with the backslash. Anyways, so let's refresh it now. And we just end up with world. You know what? This makes more sense. So why did we end up with world after running this? We have our divider here, test div, and it's initially loaded with hello and our span of test in it. Well, we wrote document.write hello world, and that ends up below here. And then we get our document and our test div, and we set the contents. Everything in here, doesn't matter what's in there at this point, becomes bold, id equals test, and then garbage. Then we use our getElementById again, and we're selecting by the ID of test. And, I mean, that's kind of confusing, I guess. And then that becomes hello world. So let's actually change this to test 2, so it's a little less confusing, and refresh. And, well, we get hello world. Okay. At this point, we have a useless hello world page, and it doesn't really seem to be doing much, this JavaScript. But it is very important, and I'm going to end the video there because we've basically gone through the basics to outputting on JavaScript. It's very simple and, well, not very straightforward. Anywho, guys, this is Hot Noob here. Please subscribe.